Hey everybody, welcome to episode 30 of the Stop and Give Me 20 podcast. 20 minutes with some of the world's top fitness professionals. I'm your host, Anthony Rana. You can check out the show notes at stop20podcast.com. That's stop20podcast.com. Before you do that, go to iTunes, subscribe to the show. You can go to Stitcher or wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a rating and a review. It's really important to kind of get the word out there. We're starting to get break into the top 200 of the podcasts in fitness and nutrition. That always helps. All right, for today's episode, I have on Ron McKeefery, and Ron is the Vice President of Performance and Education for PLAE. That's PLAE. He is a nationally recognized as a leader in the area of sports development. He's twice been named the Collegiate Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year. He is a Master Strength and Conditioning Coach from the Collegiate Strength and Conditioning Coaches Association. That's pretty prestigious. He's worked in the pros. He's worked in the college. He's written an Amazon international bestseller. That's called CEO Strength Coach. And he's the host of the podcast Iron Game Chalk Talk. Whew. Ron, thanks for coming on.
Hey, man, I apologize to everybody for listening and all that. But, hey, Anthony, I want to just take a quick second and just recognize you for the work you're doing. But what most people don't know, maybe your listeners don't know, is that 5 years ago when I started Iron Game Chalk Talk, I reached out to you, and you were instrumental in getting that going. So I appreciate you for that and appreciate you having me on the show, man. It's an honor.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm so glad I was able to help. And, you've come a long way from those first days, so love it.
Appreciate that.
All right, Ron, let's get into this. What's your story?
Yeah, man. I wrote about this in the book, but, I think I traced it all the way back. I had to do some real self-evaluation to figure out kind of how, what was my, origin story or how I got into this thing. And I traced it back to third grade. I grew up in the inner city of Kansas City, not very, single parent, 5 kids, not a lot of money and not the safest area in the world. And, we'd walk home from school and it was, probably 5 or 6 city blocks and went the same way every day. But one day I felt uneasy. There were some basically some gang members on a sidewalk, and I didn't feel comfortable walking that way. And I decided to walk the back way. And, you go a block out of your normal direction when you're in third grade. And, it might as well be going in another state. And, I was walking back the back way and came across a football field and saw, a bunch of guys, coaches out there with whistles and 100 plus guys running around, and just was freaking captivated. It was all, it was awe inspiring to me to see this, everybody going in the same direction, everybody doing the same thing. And, just incredible. So I walked out in the middle of the field. You can imagine a third grader walking right out into the middle of the field of a football game. And, our football practice, and the coach, could have said, "Hey kid, get out of here." But instead he walked me over to the sideline and put me on the bench, and I watched practice for the next 2 hours. And, there was a quarterback that threw the ball to me, and, I missed it, and it hit my nose and bloodied my nose. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And, from that moment on, I wanted to be an NFL quarterback, and I worked as hard as I could, and I found the weight room through that, and ended up playing college football, playing college quarterback, blew my shoulder out, and changed to safety. But that set me down the path of finding the weight room and thus turn around and building a career that's taken me around the world and provided for my family and all those things, man.
It's amazing. It's like the those sliding doors movies, where like if you went one way, your life would change, right? So you took the other way, you found the football field. Another thing is, man, you could have went home crying from that bloody nose, but you thought it was the coolest thing ever. I love it.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
That's amazing. Ron, so with that, did you have any superheroes kind of growing up? I'm assuming it's going to be one of these coaches, but who's your superhero growing up? Who influenced you the most?
Yeah, I would say coaches. The coaches that I had on the different teams. Probably the coach that had the biggest impact, I had two. I had my freshman football coach was, he believed in me. He was a backup catcher. He was a bullpen catcher for the Royals, and but he could throw the football a mile, it seemed like, and so I just wanted to be like that guy. And I was when I showed up to high school, again, not having played little league football as much as the other kids and all that. I was the seventh quarterback of seven. When I ran over to the quarterback line, when everybody said what position they wanted to play. And, I worked my way up into being the starter and had this coach kind of bought into me and was an advocate for me throughout my high school career, kind of getting opportunities and really fought for me. And then when I got into college, my senior year, we had a guy named Chris Creighton that came in. We went 1-9 my junior year and turned it around and went 9-1 my senior year. And really didn't have anything other than, a strength program and an organ, and a leadership program that kind of came in when all the players were the same, that turned it around. And so, just seeing what leadership could do, what a solid strength leadership program could do, really was impactful to me as a coach, moving forward. And so much so that I left the Cincinnati Bengals to go work for the man when he became a head coach at the Division I level. I'd told my wife that if he ever got a job at the Division I level, I was going to leave wherever I was at to go work for him. And I did that, and we were able to turn around Eastern Michigan, who had not won a bowl, had not gone to a bowl game in over 30 years. In 3 short years, we turned it around to where it's one of the biggest turnarounds in college football.
That's awesome. What about now? Who like anybody? I mean, again, I say this. I have so many amazing people on this show, but you're surrounded by some great people. You're doing a lot of education with PLAE. You're bringing some people in there. Who's out there right now that's doing some great things? Who's a superhero to you now?
Well, I would tell you that my wife is probably my superhero now. I mean, she's we adopted 4 kids, 3 from the Ukraine, 1 from Honduras. She is, she's a coach's wife, and so that means that she's essentially raising them. She runs a Doberman rescue on the side where she saved 78 dogs last year.
Wow.
I mean, she's just a rock star, and just does incredible things. But in the field, I think 2 people that are maybe underrated that I think are just close friends of mine, that do a great job are Robert Dos Remedios. I mean, people that know him, he's not underrated by any means, but he's just not out there as much. And Jim Kilbasso, he's president of the IYCA now, and works out of a Total Sports complex in Wixom, Michigan. And those 2 guys that not only have been instrumental to me in the profession, but they've also been great friends and mentors in life. And so think the world of both of them.
Yeah, I love those guys. Obviously, Dos and I are pretty good friends, and Jim and I have had a few conversations kind of similar to what you and I did when he was starting a podcast. So he's doing a great job as well. Good stuff.
Absolutely.
Ron, look, you've been a coach in the pros, in the college level. You're now the vice president of education, of performance and education for PLAE. So, a little different. Who are you trying to be a superhero to now? Who are the people you're trying to help with your message?
Yeah, I mean, just in my life, I'm trying to be a superhero to my kids. I think that's, I think anytime, for you to be a success in your profession, your home team has to be a success. And so I'm trying to be a superhero to my wife. I'm trying to be a superhero to my kids, and just be an example to them. I think professionally, I've always, I've had a passion my whole career of impacting young men, young women, athletes to do, to be better humans and use sport as that vehicle. But through that process, what I didn't realize was the passion that I have for coaches. I've had the chance to mentor a lot of coaches. Coaches that have gone on to win World Series and NBA championships and on and on and on. And I was in a lot of ways I was the guy that got them started. And man, you want to talk about just a sense of pride and seeing people come in, learn your system, go on, build on it, and then end up being colleagues of yours. it's so impactful because we all know that a coach impacts more people in one day than most people do in their entire life. And I don't think there's any higher calling than to be a coach, and to have an impact on coaches, I think, is incredible. And so, through my experience of adopting kids internationally, coaching in NFL Europe, I learned that there's, this world's small. And, I wanted, when I left Eastern and looked for my next opportunity, making a global impact on coaches was extremely important to me. And that's what I'm hoping I'm doing with my new role.
Absolutely, you certainly are. And let's go a little deeper with that role, because I want to know from you. You and I were talking earlier about, when you're providing education right now. There's a lot of, our colleagues that are even doing it, like Perform Better, for example, does an amazing job. You're now putting on educational workshops and conferences and summits. What do you feel like you are trying to do in those summits that not is just different, but how are you trying to go about educating people, maybe like what's been missing out there, and some positive things that you feel like you're trying to do and bring to the table?
Yeah, I think, with education, with what we're doing right now, we have many different buckets. One is our summits. With our summits, I think we've done it's a variety of speakers, variety of topics, and I've used, my relationships that I've built through the podcast and different things to bring in A-listers, people that would not normally come, like we just brought in Kelly Starrett to Noblesville, Indiana, at a high school, in Indiana. I mean, that doesn't normally happen. And so trying to find, bring in A-listers to places that, people and give them access to people that wouldn't normally have that. We've built out, my podcast, I Give Chalk Talk, continue to do that. We've added, an Ask Coach Max segment where, they're able to ask questions. We've added a Pass the Mic segment where I'm able to pass the mic to people that they wouldn't normally have access to and ask questions. I think, we're doing Beyond the Chalk, which is one of the things I'm most excited about is, it's basically me going out, much like you do with Strength Coach TV, and, spending a day in the life with the strength coach, and really getting to understand the guy behind the whistle, and basically raising up the people that I think are some of the most incredible people on the planet. And so it's kind of a cross between a day in the life and MTV Cribs and showcasing people around there. And then I think what we're doing unique, is these masterminds. I mean, you and I both know from kind of being in the entrepreneurial space, masterminds are a big part of what we do. You have to surround yourself with people that are like-minded, that can push you and challenge you, and masterminds often do that. And so we've added a mastermind component to our summits, but then we've also created, 2 masterminds that are deep dives into a topic with the leading experts, and then those leading experts, along with you, create a program that you're able to take back to your organizations. And so, really excited about those as well.
Very cool, Ron. We get a lot of, we see this. We're seeing such great. It's the age of information. We're seeing more and more stuff about online courses, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think we're doing a good job of drowning out some of the snake oil salesmen and some of these other the people that are trying to sell their product in some bad ways?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this question because I've just literally answered this a couple times through email the last couple of days, and it's kind of this back when you got into it, when I got into it. Kind of the internet, if you were doing anything on the internet, you were considered a guru, and it was almost like this, you were blacklisted to some degree. And I definitely think that we're making progress in that area because I think strength coaches and coaches are realizing that, you have to be entrepreneurial. You have to be forward thinking. You have to create multiple streams of income. You have to understand branding and putting yourself out there. And I think what we are drowning that out now, obviously for everyone, for every one solid coach that pops up, there's 10 that pop up that maybe aren't doing it the right way and just trying to get your name out there and take content and do things like that. But But I do think this, and my challenge to anybody that's listening is, we have an obligation. I mean, you can't sit back and point to other people and say, they're doing it bad if you're not doing anything, and I think that, the good coaches, that's more of a reason why the good coaches need to be on there, so that there is good information being disseminated, than to just point and say, oh, that guy's an idiot and, self-promoter, this, that, and the other. I mean, there's a right way to do things, and I think that you and I both, the way that we do it is it's always off of a platform of education. We always trying to provide education. A lot of that content is free, much like, your podcast that you do. And then some of it, sometimes there's an opportunity there to create an additional revenue stream for you. And understanding the volatility of our profession, that's smart. It's not self-promoting or these different things. That's creating multiple buckets that in case, all of a sudden, coach comes downstairs and says you're fired, I've got a wife and 4 kids at home that need to be provided for, and I think it's important that, as coaches, we recognize that.
Absolutely. And like you said, I mean, I think more of us need to kind of stick together in terms of, like we were talking about earlier, is you and I could certainly have said, oh man, Ron's a competitor. We're not competitors. We're doing stuff to educate the industry, and that's the way we got to try to keep going.
Rising tide raises all ships, right?
There you go. All right, Ron, now it's time for the stop and give me 5 rapid fire questions and answers. You ready to go?
Absolutely.
All right, you've been all over the place. I think you even had a hashtag like, where in the world is Coach McKeefery?
That's right.
Coolest work-related trip, event you've taken?
In the past, it was Barcelona when I was in NFL Europe. I mean, just flying in, the mountains of water, Olympic Stadium, all those things I thought was really, really incredible. Most recently, it's been I got a chance to speak in China and speak in Australia and take my wife. And that was awesome, being able to walk on the Great Wall with my wife and be able to walk over the Sydney Bridge with her as well. And meet incredible people from different parts of the world was probably those were probably the 3 most incredible.
Very cool. You can have lunch with anyone you have not met yet on the planet. Who's it going to be?
Yeah, I wish I had a more worldly answer. But as a coach, I think, and I've shook hands with both these guys, but I've never had lunch with them or had an opportunity to speak with them. But I think just winners. I mean, Saban, Belichick, I think, those guys are winners. And I'm constantly in a relentless pursuit for continuous improvement. And, if I can learn something from guys that just consistently do it, I think would be big.
Love it. So I'm going to give you can have both of them then. I said 1, but you can have 2. Ron, best moment working in the collegiate setting?
I think when I was at South Florida, we built a program from scratch. It didn't have football. At one point we were ranked number 2 in the country, and went through the different levels. And one of the games that kind of catapulted that was we went to Auburn, which is an incredible SEC program, incredible environment, sold out deal, and we ended up taking them to a double overtime and winning in double overtime. And I mean, you want to talk about just kind of almost like a David and Goliath type of moment, and just an incredible memory. That's by far one of the best.
Very cool. Best moment working in the pro setting?
There's tons of wins. There's tons. I mean, NFC Championship game, AFC play, the playoffs, the whole deal. But the moment that sticks out in my mind is we were playing Chicago Bears opening day, and just beautiful day, not a cloud in the sky, awesome environment, open, national anthem and the Jets flying over. I just got freaking, I was just on a high. It was just the most incredible moment where you just sit back and you just remember how, just how lucky you are to be a coach and be in that setting.
Incredible. Awesome. I know you talked about Coach Dose and Kilbasso. You can't use them, but most underrated person in the fitness coaching industry, maybe somebody, you've interviewed so many people that maybe somebody that we might not know about.
Wow, those are my guys. I would have to go with the two guys that took over for me at Eastern, Fred Hale and Brian Fink. Both are incredible coaches. Like I said, I've developed several, hundreds of coaches that have gone on to great things, and those guys are in the top two for sure.
Very cool. Coach, you're working on a lot of stuff. What's something that you're working on right now that's getting you really excited?
I think two things. I mean, I mentioned it a little bit earlier with the Beyond the Chalk. I mean, going around and being able to immerse myself in different settings and be a part of people's organizations and be able to portray those coaches, I think is super exciting. And then I'm working on a new book, and the new book is essentially kind of a best way to describe it's kind of a chicken soup for the soul for strength coaches. It's I love the 5 minutes before and the 5 minutes after the lift where you get to talk to the team and help them become better humans. And oftentimes I use stories to do that. And so essentially what I'm doing is collaborating with many strength coaches around the world and having them contribute their stories. And we're putting it together into like a daily devotional that you can use with your athletes and sit on your desk and find stories that might be able to drive home a message to your athletes.
Love it. Cool. Looking forward to that. Coach, what is that? What's that letter to your younger self? We'll wrap it up. What's the advice you're going to give young Ron before you're kind of getting into adulthood?
Yeah, I think the thing that I had to learn was that, when I work with athletes or clients or whatever, they're never going to be as passionate about it as you are. I mean, I chose to do this with my career. And, I had to, early on, I mean, there's dents in the door where I threw a plate at a kid for being 5 minutes late. There's, I'd go from, calm to 100, in a second if somebody didn't, do the right thing. And what I would tell my younger self is that you can be passionate. You can show your passion, because that's what I was doing. I was showing, I was trying to get them to understand and appreciate my passion. You can be passionate without being emotional. Find time to be able to dig into people's stories, figure out what's going on. Doesn't mean you have to limit your accountability in any way. But once you get to the root of the problem, then you can address it as a human and make them better, and not break down relationships. And I would say that early on in my career, I probably broke down, relationships, when I didn't need to.
All right, great advice, and just something that you're doing anyway on a continuing basis is giving great advice. The industry is so lucky to have you, and although I know you were working with teams a lot, but I think it's great that now that you're working with PLAE to kind of really get the word out there and educate even more strength coaches and people. Love what you're doing, so thanks for coming on today.
Thanks, man. It's been an honor, and I really appreciate this show and all the things that you do and all the projects that you're working on. And people don't realize how much goes into that sometimes, but I do, and really appreciate you, brother.
All right, Coach. Well, that's going to do it for episode 30 of the Stop and Give Me 20 podcast. Thanks again to Coach McKeefery. Make sure to check out all the links to all his stuff at stop20podcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave us a rating and a review. It's really going to help us out. My name's Anthony Renna. Thanks so much for stopping by.